Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda. I'm getting more demented by the
week. That's hilarious. Hi, David, and welcome listeners to episode 253. This is the second part of the personal work that David and I did with Rose, as she talked about the grief she's experienced with her father.
And then in this part two episode, in part one, we kind of did the testing and the empathy and tried to connect with Rose and make sure she felt understood, both her thoughts and feelings, and accepted. And I think one small teaching point about part one was that we weren't trying to interpret anything. We weren't trying to cheerlead. We weren't trying to change anything. We just wanted to paraphrase what Rose was saying and what she was feeling. You have to use discipline to do that and resist the urge to help or rescue someone. And just be with them and use I feel statements and express your sadness, the compassion that you feel to make the person feel safe and accepted and to open up how they're really feeling inside. And then today we'll start with once you've empathized with someone and gotten an A, or in this case, I think because of Rhonda's kindness and gentleness, she gave us A pluses, which was really neat. But then we raised the question is, how are we going to help any patient we're working with? Once you've empathized, now how do you help them change their life in some relevant or meaningful or important way? What are you going to do in today's session, really, to help them? And so we now invite you to listen to the exciting and heartwarming conclusion of our session with Rose on the impending loss of her father. Let me ask, just from a teaching point here, and your folks are listening, and it's a sad but beautiful story and about a very, to my way of thinking, probably unique and very special father-daughter relationship. But from a teaching point, what one was trying to figure out as a therapist, what am I supposed to do? What do I have to offer? What is a therapist supposed to do? And then a really nice thing is to let the patient, in this case a dear colleague, lead us in that. And maybe, Rhonda, you'd be willing, if you're up to it, to ask the invitation step, which is kind of the bridge between the empathy phase and the assessment of resistance phase as we go through the TEAM sequence of Team CBT.
I'd love to. So, Rose, I feel really grateful that you gave David and me an A+ for empathy, and I really appreciate that so much. I feel really connected to you. I love learning about your family and hearing about your relationship with your dad. I think David described it so well when he said it was such a unique and special relationship.
It is. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if this might be a good time for us to roll up our sleeves and get to work on some of the thoughts and feelings that you're having, or maybe it isn't. Maybe we might need to do a little bit, have you talk a little bit more and get some more support and empathy, because that's really important. I don't want to cut us off prematurely, or is there something else you haven't mentioned that you want to bring up?
No, I think I'm ready to get to work on this. I think the empathy was really powerful for me to remember the positive, memories and why this is so meaningful to me. And the both of you are doing a beautiful job of just staying here with it. So thank you. I'm definitely wanting to get some relief from this too. So I can kind of free up some of the real estate for more of the interactions and, the experiences that we want to have.
Okay, great. Let's dive in then.
Okay. Awesome.
And so suppose that at the end of the session today, you think, boy, that was really a terrific experience. What would you be hoping for? What would you be wanting to happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not going to be able to change the fact that we're grieving, and that's just, part of the process. But I think that I would like to get some help with just the intensity of these emotions when they come on. It does feel very overwhelming and debilitating, and all of the feelings at once. To just kind of dial them down so that they're not detracting from the day-to-day, that I could kind of still have the space to grieve and to process and to remember him, and also be present for my kids who are also going through this process too, my family. And, I think one of the emotions that are probably stands out more is anxiety. And that comes and goes, because I think the sadness, you're right, David, I wouldn't take that away. That would just not mean how, that's sort of representative of the loss and the love and the connection. But yeah, some of these other emotions, like the anxiety, the guilt, so that I can just be here and really enjoy the time that I have with him and be able to support my family.
Sure. Well, let's do exactly that. And before we decide what we might want to dial them down to, we should take a look at what's positive about these other emotions as well. What are some really good things about your anxiety? What does it show about you that's positive and awesome? And what are some benefits and advantages to you of your anxiety? And I'm going to be writing these down, and you might want to list them too. I already did the sadness, and I just put that sadness, I put love and connection, which you mentioned. But how about anxiety? What are some of the positives about your anxiety?
Yeah, the positives of the anxiety, I think that it shows it's warranted sort of in a situation like this. It just sort of, and we don't know what the outcomes are going to look like. I think ultimately my anxiety shows that I love and I care about him. I just don't want him to suffer any more than he needs to.
Right.
Yeah. So those are two things. It's warranted, the anxiety, and then it shows the love and care, and that I don't want him to suffer. What are some other potential benefits? Those are great, but what are some other really positive things about your anxiety, helpful things?
I think it shows that I'm more helpful things about the anxiety. I think it kind of motivates me to ask him how he's doing. And I think it does kind of facilitate this process in a more helpful way. If I wasn't anxious, maybe I wouldn't be checking up and, dialing in and sort of kind of, connecting with him, and also trying to also see if there's other options I can help him, maybe try this or try that, other suggestions that we can be making. And, it motivates me to be more active in this process, I think.
Try to be more vigilant about the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wanting to know, I guess.
Yeah, more on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I put down two things here, two additional positives. One, it motivates me to ask and to connect with him and to make every moment count.
Yeah.
Right.
That's true. I didn't think about that.
And then in addition, it motivates me to explore other treatments, to be vigilant, to make sure we don't overlook something.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the anxieties also motivated us to really kind of contemplate, should we move back, and if that isn't the decision that my husband and I make for our family, it's really motivating me to visit more. Like we were going to go back again in July for a week and be able to kind of spend time with them and take the kids around. But I think that this anxiety is motivating me to, like you said, make use of this time as best as possible.
It sounds like the anxiety is helping you prepare for the future.
Yeah.
You're seeing, like you said, the ninth life of your dad, it's cat life. And, you're visiting more and talking to him more. So you're kind of, the anxiety is helping you prepare for that future.
So I listed all of that too. That's great. Now, how about the guilt? You've been as much as 80% guilty. What are some really good things about the guilt?
I mean, it shows that again, it's like same thing, the connection I have there with him and my family, and that it kind of, in a way, it still also motivates the driving to visit more, to like reduce the guilt. Like, I think there's the thought of like, I don't want to live with regrets. Like, I don't want to live after the fact saying, I wish I should have done this. Like, that's, I think, where I get anxiety about. So the guilt and the anxiety kind of tag team together. They sort of, the anxiety kind of helps, I think, to diffuse some of the guilt. Well, if I'm doing things I know I'm doing what in my conscious awareness that I can do. And the guilt,
So it's kind of helping you set your priorities.
Yes.
Again, my example will probably be pretty trivial by comparison, but you know how much I love my cats.
Your cat.
And my best friend in the world was Obi. I'm developing a new friend with the one we adopted, the 6-year-old Sweetie Pie, who's finally decided that she glommed right onto my wife, and I was kind of like second fiddle. But now she's got my status is raised a little bit.
Yes.
But I always told Obi, that when I would go on a workshop on the plane, I'd say, now when you get home, remember to spend quality time with Obi, because you don't know, how, and he's your best friend, and he loves you and you love him, and you don't know how much time you're going to have. And then when I'd get home, I always did that. This is one thing I did okay in my life. I gave him a lot of time, and he wanted to be outside with me because he was a feral cat. Although he became a house cat, he was still feral. And he wanted me to go outside, and then he wanted me to walk around the neighborhood with him following me so other neighbors could see, that he was my guy and I was his guy. And we did that all the time. And then when I lost him, when he disappeared that one night, he was feral. He would go out and hunt from 4 to 6, and that's when the mountain lion was out there too. And that's probably what happened to the poor guy. But we had 8 years with him, 8 beautiful years, and I'll grieve his loss forever. And I never want to stop grieving his loss. I still kind of look out the kitchen door. Maybe he'll appear at the kitchen door again, like the first time he came to us when he was wounded and dying, and we kind of saved him. And I know he won't, but and I shout out his name. Did it yesterday. Every time I jog, I shout, "Obi, Obi," like that, and it's like a ritual, you might say. But I don't have to look back and say, and regret that I missed the boat and missed the time I had with him. And last night with our little Sweetie Pie, I kind of woke up in the middle of the night and found her, that she had gotten on the bed right close to me. She doesn't snuggle yet against my chest, but I mean, this is probably too long-winded and ridiculous, but I started, petting her, and she started purring really loud. And then she rolled over on her back and put her paws up, like legs up with her paws over and her back legs the same. And then I was just petting her tummy. And I did it for like probably about 30 minutes. And she was just in heaven. And, it'll be the same with Sweetie Pie, that I always gave my best to her. And when I go out with her, I'm too liberal, because she wants to get away with stuff, like climbing.
Yeah.
And yesterday I could see she was about to jump up and start climbing this tree, which freaked me out, but I kind of looked the other way, and sure enough, she started climbing up it, and she went really high, and I got really scared. And then I said, "Sweetie Pie, you've got to come down." And she ignored me, and I went and got my son, and he came out, and then she saw we were really alarmed, and she kind of made her way down and jumped onto the deck where we were. But, I'll never have regret. So I love what you're saying, that you'll never have to live with regret. That's really a beautiful thing. I can feel so strongly about that myself. Now, you gave yourself a 70 on incompetence, and what are some really wonderful things about feeling incompetent, Rose?
I think I was marking defective, but I might have.
Oh, defective. Okay, let me change it. Oh, yes, you're right. I misread it. The X's are on the right edge of the defective. Yeah. What's great about feeling defective?
What's great about feeling defective is that I'm I guess honest with my vulnerability and my humanity. That this is challenging.
Yeah. I love that. And then what's really awesome about being 80% lonely and rejected, I guess, is what you say you feel, right? Did I read that right?
Alone?
Well, that's what I had thought. It was alone. Yeah. See, the boxes. You can't
I'm
tell.
sorry. I did the wrong one there. It is alone.
Yeah. Well, I had interpreted alone. I'll cross off this other thing.
You were right. Yeah.
Yeah. And we'll have to get Angela Poach to change this a little bit.
Sorry, Angela.
The lonely and alone. What's wonderful about being 80% lonely and alone?
I think it just shows the importance of my relationships in my life, and it motivates me again to make those connections and to make the most of this time that I have.
Yeah. Exactly.
Rose, do you think it shows that you don't want to let your dad down or your family down?
The lonely and alone. In what, like in the way that I'm,
you're committed to visiting more. You're committed to having phone calls more.
Yeah.
You're committed to keeping the relationship going as much as you possibly can.
Yeah. I didn't
not taking it for granted.
Yes.
But it's really an expression of your love for your dad and for the family and for others. Yeah. And then the hopeless and discouraged and pessimistic and despairing 90, what's positive about that?
I think there's a realism here that this is sort of like, it sort of saves me from getting my hopes up too high. Like it's so that I'm not delusional about something that won't happen.
Yeah.
And I'm more prepared. It prepares me.
Yeah. That's three things: realistic, don't get hopes up too high, and it prepares me. That's for sure. And anything else besides those three?
I think it shows that I want to be hopeful. When you still feel like hopeless, like it's sort of showing that we want to hold on to something.
Oh yeah.
For whatever I have left, whether these moments, right, like to make them count.
Value and make each moment count.
Rose, does your hopelessness show anything about you having a moral or a spiritual compass?
Hopeless, having a moral or spiritual.
Guilt might show that.
I think that. Yeah, I think that there's a piece that comes into question, the spirituality piece. I'm not very spiritual, but I have like groundings, and like I was raised with Christianity, and I do have beliefs. But I think sometimes these moments kind of bring up feelings of anger, of like that this is unfair, like that this is
We didn't do anger. Let's put angry. How angry do you get between 0 and 100?
I think in moments when I have those thoughts, it would be like 80, like
80, right.
Shouldn't happen so early. And
yeah. And then what's great about your anger?
That well, it shows that I won't I'll put up a fight. Like I will kind of, contest this. I won't just, I can't change it, but I won't just let it happen without meaning, I suppose. Like that this is going to make, if this is what we have left, I want to make the best of it. And also that I think when I think of anger, I think it's like connected to one of the thoughts that like, it's not fair. He's sick and he can die. Mm-hmm. I think there's anger about, I wish we could have caught this earlier, because if that had been caught the first time, then we might not be having this conversation. Right. That's the hard part.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And also anger about the exploitation of the medical system.
Yeah, exactly. All of these factors that make it more challenging to get quality care. And then it's like sort of like an added layer of, well, shit that they, these systems put on families. Like imagine if you were, in a family of 4 or 5 and couldn't make ends meet and this happened, like that would be horrific to say. We can't give you this cure.
Absolutely. And that's happening to so many people. Now, just to speed things along a little bit here, let's put the goal for each negative emotion. You said you wanted to dial them down a little bit. And so let's use the goal column and say, what percent would you want at the end of the session, your sadness and depression to go?
That magic dial that we have.
Sure. Before we do the magic dial, can we spend a little bit more time on positive reframing? Is that okay?
Sure, we can. Tell us what you have in line. I actually skipped frustration, but anything you want to add to that, let's do that. Thank you.
I think Rhonda was asking me some really key questions about hopeless, and it was starting to I was starting to think about it, but I don't know if I caught all of that, because I think hopeless is the emotion I struggle with when I feel really the down. Like I think I'm okay to hold on to the sad and depression because that makes sense, but then the hopeless is it just sort of deflates. That's when the hopeless and defeated, I think, come hand in hand. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. You were asking, Rhonda, if that shows like some sign of spirituality or I don't know what else you mentioned.
Moral compass.
Moral compass. I'm just having a hard time finding anything else, I guess, about this hopeless. But
well, sometimes hopelessness shows what a critical thinker you are. I mean, you're not a person who's sticking your head in the sand and pretending this isn't happening. It sounds like you're helping your mom figure out, well, is radiation appropriate? Is chemotherapy appropriate? That's a really incredible quality to have, being able to think critically and make good decisions.
Yeah.
It might also lead you to the conclusion to stop chemotherapy if it's not helping, and that could be a blessing for your father.
Yeah, that if he decides that that's not working for him, that's true. If we were just overly optimistic, that would not be helpful. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, this makes sense. Yeah, it's part of the anxiety and the critical thinking and and being vigilant. Yeah. Okay.
And also, I think so. I think hopelessness, again, throughout this whole thing shows your love of your dad and your love of your family and your love of life in general. Yeah. Yeah, no, that's true. I don't like to feel such despair or lack of control or, of outcomes, right? That we really can't manage or really can't foresee. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. This is helpful.
Anything positive about your frustration, which I quit? I skipped.
Yeah. I mean, I think frustration always motivates more persistence.
Right? Yeah. And it shows that you have persistence, that you haven't given up.
Right? Oh, yeah. Oh, that's true. But I'm not just throwing the towel in, again, surrendering to the hopeless. Yeah.
Do you think the frustration shows what high standards you have? You know, have high standards in maintaining the unique and beautiful relationship you have with your dad, and you have high standards about keeping the relationship with your dad and your children.
Mm-hmm. Maintaining that. Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about it that way. Yeah. Thank you.
All of these negative emotions are really just an expression of your love for life and your love for your father.
You know, Rose, before we asked you to do the positive reframe, we didn't say the magic button question about if there was, if you had the opportunity to get rid of all these challenging feelings and negative thoughts, would you get rid of them? And now that we've identified all of the, you know, the beauty and the positives with all these challenging feelings, I'm wondering, given all the positives that we've identified, why would you want to get rid of the challenging feelings and negative thoughts that are attached to them?
And I think what you said at the very beginning, that you had no interest in that. It's what kind of why I skipped the magic button, but that you might like to dial them down a little bit. And would this be a time to maybe take a look at that and see what, like how, I mean, the sadness and the depression are a beautiful thing. What might you want them to be at the end of the session today if we had that magic dial that Rhonda mentioned?
I mean, I think somewhere along the lines of even 50 or 60.
Okay, so let's put 50 to 60 there in your goal column. And what would be your goal for the anxiety that was at 100? What would be an ideal level of anxiety?
Like, let's say 30%.
30, okay. And then how about guilty?
15.
15, great. And how about defective? How defective do you want to feel today?
I don't want to feel it, but maybe 5%.
5. That's enough defectiveness for the day.
Maybe I need it. Maybe I should bump it up. Keep myself humble. Let's say 10%.
Oh, we'll go up to a bold 10. Yeah, we'll double the effectiveness. And then how lonely and alone did you want to feel?
I don't like those feelings, but I could see what they serve. I guess a 10%.
10? Okay, great. How about hopeless? How hopeless do you want to be feeling today?
I think 10% would be
10. That's plenty. How frustrated do you want to feel?
I would say even 20%.
20, great. And how angry do you want to feel?
I would say 25.
Yeah, great. Okay. Now, we're done kind of with the assessment of resistance and reevaluated the goals for the session. Now we'll move on to methods. And what I would say is what thought, again, just to speed things along a little bit, we're doing fine, actually. What thought might you want to focus on first? You gave us 10 really good negative thoughts, and let's zero in on one of them and see if there's some distortions in it and see how we might challenge the thought.
Yeah. I think I'll start with number 1. He's going to die. We're running out of time.
Okay. In a way, there are no distortions in that thought, right?
It's true. Yeah.
So how I mean, one could do a downward arrow, Rhonda, but maybe we could just say how might you talk back to that thought to see if you can kind of soften that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's true. He's going to die. I mean, we're all going to die. It's existentially, I mean, it's an existential thing, right? We're all going to be, leaving this earth at some point, and no one is promised tomorrow. So it's just important to, I think I've kind of explored and come to terms with through this process, realize that I just need to use this to motivate me to to be present in these relationships and to kind of harness and, take the opportunity to be together as much as possible until that happens.
So I put this in the right-hand column. We're all going to die eventually, but I can be present and use these moments to be together. I can be and use these moments to be together.
Yeah, this is true.
And how much is that? 100% true?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And does that soften the intensity of this negative thought? Does that reduce it from 100 at all? Because we can't reduce its truth, because it is 100% true.
Mm-hmm.
But does that soften it at all for you?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it brings it down to 50% because, like you said, it's truthful. But I think the anxiety associated with that and the guilt and all of that has gone down.
Right. Now, I want you to imagine that Rhonda is someone just like you.
Okay.
And that her father's going to die, and she's had the same loving relationship. And then Rhonda is going to kind of verbalize these negative thoughts using the first person I and see what you would say to her.
Okay. Yeah. Double standard.
Yep.
Well, Rose, I'm really concerned because I just really can't take on any more grief. I mean, I can't take on any more in my life, and I just don't have any space in my life for any more grief. And I'm wondering, do you think that's true? Do you think I can't take any more on? And do you think I don't have any space to grieve?
No, I don't think that's true. I think that it is hard. It is challenging that you kind of want to support your children. And there's some moments that you have to be with them. Like you have no choice to kind of really support them. But that you can handle it, that this is going to be painful. I think that's the piece that we just need to accept, that this is not going to be easy. And grief is sort of on its own, just a powerful and intense emotion, but that it shows how much love and commitment you have to your family. So you can make the space. You're kind of making that happen with your interactions and being present more as much as you can in these relationships. So I don't think it's true. I think it's difficult. I'll acknowledge that, but it's not necessarily true. You can't do it.
Gosh,
so who won that exchange?
Well, wait. Let me ask her another question.
Please, yeah.
I don't know, Rose. I feel so much better that you've said that. That although there will be moments that you're going to support my kids, it's going to be painful and intense, but it also shows how much love and commitment I have toward my father. You also told me that I could make the space, and I feel so much better that you told me that. And I'm just kind of wondering, are you only saying that to me to make me feel better, or are those things that you actually believe yourself?
No, I believe it. 100% I believe it, that this is true, that you can make the space. And it's almost like maybe I just am you're just needing to give yourself permission to give yourself the space and prioritize that.
And then since David said, I'm a clone of yours and I'm going through the exact same experience as you, and that was beautiful that what you told me would be true for me, I'm wondering if you can turn that around and speak to yourself with that same kind of compassion.
Yeah, of course. I mean,
and awareness of your own abilities.
Yeah. And we won't ask you to do that and write it down right now. We're going to continue with the double standard that Rhonda so beautifully introduced. And then when you listen to the audio, or after the session, you can write your positive thoughts, because I think doing the writing is really important. But I again am someone just like you. And I have another thought, and I'm wondering if you could help me with this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Everything you've been saying so far is true, but I'm telling myself that I should be stronger and shouldn't fall apart. and cry when I get news like this. Does that seem true?
No, that seems really kind of critical and unhelpful. And absolutely, if you didn't have that reaction, that would mean that you didn't really care as much as you did. Or it just makes sense when you come to terms with these really scary facts that you're going to feel upset, and you're going to you probably need to give yourself some space to kind of fall apart a little bit here and there. And maybe the resolution here is that maybe you just need to ask for help, right? From my partner, to kind of be there with the kids so I can have time, so you can have time. But that this is going to, this is the first time I think you also really I think that was the moment you knew that that this was serious. I don't think you really had the full picture before. So you were kind of not knowing and just waiting. And so it made sense why it was so shocking, right? I don't think you were knowing it was going to be like that. So
are you telling me, I love what you're saying, but are you telling me that it's okay for me to not be strong and to fall apart?
Yeah.
Is that true, or are you just blowing smoke in my face?
No, that's true.
Okay.
It's totally true.
Back to Rhonda. You did great on that.
But Rose, I'm really worried. I'm struggling so much because I think I really should have visited my dad more. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, that's totally true. I should have spent more time. But and we had intended to this last year, but the challenges of the pandemic just made that impossible. And we actually had a visit scheduled in April you did. You had this visit scheduled. Sorry, I get so confused about the role. But he was actually going in surgery, so it wasn't possible. Or he was in recovery. It just didn't happen. But now that you have everyone safely vaccinated, and you could do that properly, that you can now do it. It's now that you have this possibility, just do it. So that's all you can really at this point.
It sounds like you're telling me not to look into the past and have regrets, but to move forward and stay present in the moment and make plans for the future. Now, not everyone's vaccinated. We can move forward and continue to and make plans to visit more often.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, you really helped us on that one, but I have this other thought that's really bugging me. It makes me mad.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm telling myself that it's not fair that he's sick and may die at the age of 70 years old. And it's also not fair that he's had so much medical problems and surgeries in the past.
Yeah, that's a hard one. It isn't. I mean, it's hard to say what is fair. That doesn't really, who is to really kind of decide, or higher powers really. It's not in anyone's hands right now, except for his, really, how he kind of lives day to day and how he takes care of himself. It is upsetting that, he's going to be missing, those years to come that maybe he could have in his 70s. And we just don't know. We don't know if he's going to die at age 70, but he turned 70 in August. But I think he'll be around. I'm hoping he'll be around for his birthday. And he also says that too. So it's frustrating. It's painful, but I don't know. You can't change that.
Mm.
That's you did a good job on that. I sometimes just to give maybe a little additional help on that one. The distortion in this one would be mislabeling. There's labeling and mislabeling, and mislabeling means the use of overly colorful language that is not quite correct. And actually, only human beings can be unfair. When a lion kills an animal to eat, the lion isn't being unfair. It may be unfortunate. The lion's just following, his or her nature that's evolved. And it's horribly unfortunate that your father is sick, but it's not unfair. In other words, no one's violating any laws or moral rules, and so for labeling and mislabeling, it's a kind of a humble technique, but the semantic technique can sometimes be helpful. Instead of saying, it's unfair, you can use this for should statements, just like a hidden should statement too.
Right.
That statement, and you can say I'm incredibly sad that my father's had so many illnesses, and it's very unfortunate, and I'll miss him terribly when he dies. I miss him terribly already, and at the same time, I'm lucky in a way, and in many ways, to have had such a wonderful father, and something so many people don't have. I have a wonderful relationship with my father, and I have the chance to connect with him all the time now, and to make these moments count. How does that one sound?
That was so powerful. I love that.
Yeah.
I think you're spot on with the labeling. I didn't catch that there in the should statement.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, there are so few distortions in any of your thoughts. That's one of the only ones that has any distortions. And then I should have visited more time. Also, that's like a should statement, but you blew that one out of the water anyway.
Shall we do one? There's maybe the last one has some distortions in it. Rose, can we do this as an externalization of voices?
Yeah, we can do that too. Yeah, let's jump to externalization of voices, and just for teaching purposes, if this is okay with you, we'll be now the negative Rose, and we're going to hit you. We're all named Rose now, and so we're going to be the negative Rose, and we'll attack you like we're another person, but we're just the negative Rose talking to you in the same way that you talk to yourself, and we'll let Rhonda start this one off.
So, Rose, remember, who am I?
Rose.
I'm the negative Rose.
Negative. Okay. Yeah.
And who are you?
The positive Rose.
Okay. Rose, you know what? I'm kind of embarrassed to say this to you, but your problems, they just really aren't as difficult as other people's problems. And you should be grateful for what you have.
Yeah, thank you for your input. I can be grateful for what I have and the time I have, and I actually am grateful for it. I think I could focus on that more sometimes, maybe than I do, which could be helpful. But the part about problems being measured as like great or not as great as others suffering, I mean, there's truth there too, right? Like, there's so many people that are suffering in many ways and have during this pandemic, and in many places all over the world, there's lots of suffering. Nobody can dispute that, but to kind of measure someone's suffering as greater than another doesn't really make it useful. It doesn't really make much sense to do that. Suffering is suffering, and I think that I think I've heard before, like, pain is inevitable. But suffering is somewhat of a choice, which is kind of, I think, why I'm here today, is to sort of work through some of this so that I'm able to just sit with the pain as it comes, but not beat myself up or make it worse than it needs to be. And my hope is that there might, that there could be something helpful of that others can hear in listening to this podcast, if they're maybe going through their own loss or grief, and that maybe there's some sort of way that this can be useful for someone else. And so I think it's important to, acknowledge and make the space for everyone's suffering and grief. It's all very important. So I'm just here focusing on this right now because this is, what I'm going through.
Well, Rose, who won that?
I think I did.
Did you win it small or large?
I think large.
Large or huge?
Not huge. There was like something missing, or it was a little long, but
try roll reversal.
Not huge. Okay. You hit me with it.
I thought it was very good, by the way.
I thought it was large, but
yeah,
the most important thing is for you to think.
Okay.
Yeah, it's what you
I mean,
think.
huge. Yeah, I thought it was huge.
Okay. So I'm negative. Is that okay?
Yeah.
And Rhonda's positive. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Rose, I need to remind you that, you know what it is? It's like saying the negative voice out loud is actually helpful. It almost feels like that double standard. But I'll say it. So, your problems are not as great as others suffering in the world, and you should just be grateful for what you have, the time you have. Just focus on that.
Gosh, you're so right, Rose. I am not suffering as much as other people. I have a home. I have a beautiful husband and 2 great kids. I have I've had the most incredible and unique relationship with my dad. I know so many people that do not have close relationships with their dad, and I have enjoyed that my entire life. And yet, I still feel so much deep pain about the loss of my father. It's sometimes overwhelming. And I am really working hard on being grateful for every moment that I have had with my father and every moment that I can have in the future with him. So I'm struggling with that, but I'm working on it every day.
That was beautiful.
Who won that, Rose?
You did. Huge.
That was huge? Okay,
Yeah.
well, let's have you end it.
Okay.
So Rose, again, you know what? It sounds so harsh for me to say this, but your problems, they just aren't as difficult as other people's. And you should really, really just be grateful for what you have.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's true. I might not be as great as another person's problems, but yeah, I really can just try to be as grateful as I can for the memories that I've had and the relationship that I've had. I've kind of learned today that, like, I think you sometimes take things for granted, right? That this might not be something another person can sit with at this point in their life with saying goodbye, that I'm actually in a really good situation based on that I've had a positive relationship, and I can use that energy and time to focus on what I have now in the present and the future of being there with my dad and my family. And so that's probably going to be the most helpful.
Mm. And who won that?
I think I did that time.
Was that small or large?
That was huge.
Huge. Yeah. That was huge. Large or huge. So that was huge.
Yeah.
Yay! That was a huge win.
That brought me there. Yeah.
I can model two additional points on that if you like to be the negative. You get you don't need to because you're already at huge, but there's a couple more angles.
Yeah. So you want me to play the negative voice? Is that right?
Yeah. Do it one more time.
Yeah. I need to remind you that your problems are not as great as others suffering. You should just be grateful for what you have and stop complaining.
Well, thank you. I was getting a little lonely there, and I can always count on you, being in my ear saying all these nasty things. And I kind of get tired of it sometimes, to tell you the truth. It's a lot of BS. But I'll tell you a couple other things. First of all, my problems are as great as maybe thousands of people who are listening to this podcast, and tens of thousands who will eventually listen to it, because they too have problems like my own. Maybe the loss of someone they love very deeply. Due to COVID or to cancer or to other things, and there's just a lot of grief and suffering in the world, and I'm hoping by sharing mine, I can maybe touch a few people and connect with a few people. So I think my suffering is pretty important, and my gift of sharing it, I hope, will be helpful to some people. And maybe to know, too, that if you write down your negative thoughts, even when you've lost a loved one, sometimes you'll find some distortions in those thoughts, and that can be helpful to you. And I always want to point out, too, that I am incredibly grateful for what I have and for my father, who, he's been like everything to me, and our relationship has been a source of so much joy, and that's why I have such intense grief. And yes, my grief is as intense as anyone. You know, my sadness and anxiety have been 100%. It doesn't get any stronger than that, and yet maybe people who are listening can see how a lot of things can be done to soften that and to add a dimension of warmth, even in the light of grief, your most horrible grief. And so, to quote the Buddha, bug out.
I applaud you.
How was that one?
Yeah. I'm so glad we have this recorded.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
That was a huge win. Thank you.
You've really been so beautiful today, and I didn't know you before this to see what a gentle, beautiful, warm person you are. Are there any of the negative thoughts that still remain? We didn't role play all of them, but
Sure.
we did most of them. Are there any that are still stinging you that we can blast before we finish here?
I think just maybe that one, this number 8, that my like this alone, that we're going to be alone.
Can I talk to you for a minute, Rose?
Sure. Yeah.
I know you blew away those other negative roses and those other thoughts, but I have one you won't be able to dispute, because it's true, and that's that you'll be alone, and your kids will grow up without one of their grandparents present in their life, and this is a grandparent who loves them now and would have loved them throughout their lives.
I get tears when I think about that.
Yeah, just let them flow. That's the only response you need for that one.
Yeah, it will be sad.
And it is sad. It's sad now. You don't even need to talk now if you don't want to. You're showing the antidote. I always feel, Rose, that sadness without distortions is, like you, I'm not very religious, but it's a spiritual thing.
Yeah.
I feel that what you're experiencing now is the essence of spirituality. It's. I mean, this may seem weird to you, but to me, your tears, they're tears of pain, but they're also tears of joy. Yeah. I don't know if you can see that.
No, I'm having a hard time.
It's just the joy that it's your love for your father, and it's a celebration of something that has been absolutely fantastic. The relationship with your father is so beautiful, and that your tears are just your way of honoring that.
Yeah.
And your boys, they'll remember, especially the older one, and what they're going to remember is pure love and joy.
Yeah. No, it's true. It really is true that he will have memories of his dedo. That's what he calls them, and we have lots of pictures and videos, especially, and that those will be that won't be taken away, right?
Yeah, right. Maybe I'm trying to help or rescue too much, but do you remember our grief presentation recently with Dr. Robert Niemeyer? Mm-hmm. And one of the cool things that I got out of that is that you never have to end that relationship with the person. In fact, you develop the relationship, and your boys can relate to their granddad for the rest of their lives, and you can talk about him, and you can reminisce with your boys about him, and that relationship can continue to grow. I just love that from his presentation. That's how I feel. I mean, it's trivial to say it, but that's how I feel about Obi. I relate to him all of the time, and I always will. And to I mean, you're lucky. Some of us didn't have that relationship with our dads,
right?
And
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, I think what you're saying is true. That was like that was a powerful part of that presentation. And actually, when I've worked with my own clients on grief, that's been the most beautiful part of the process, is like of keeping that relationship alive and the things that they do, their day to day, your projects. And you're right, the legacy and sort of like his memories, like it's still all there. It's not going away. It's just changing.
I would just say thank your lucky stars and crash and grieve as often as you want.
Mm-hmm.
Probably stupid to say that, but that's how I feel.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, Rose, let's look at the how, now that we've done a couple of methods and had this great interaction, let's look at what you're feeling right now and see if you've met your goal.
Mm-hmm.
So how sad and depressed are you feeling at this moment?
I mean, I would say like 45, 50.
Okay, put 50 there. And how anxious are you feeling right now?
Like 15%.
15, fantastic. How guilty are you feeling?
5%.
Great. How defective are you feeling?
5%.
How lonely and alone are you feeling?
0.
0. What? How hopeless are you feeling?
Like 2%.
2. Great. How frustrated are you feeling?
I'm not. 0.
Defeated.
0.
No.
And how angry are you feeling?
0.
0. And 2 questions, and then we'll kind of wrap it up. Sorry I had to push things along a little bit, but you were so beautiful throughout. You met or exceeded all of your goals, most of them dramatically, and the only one that's elevated is the one that you want to keep elevated. The sadness and everything else dropped to negligible levels. So the first question, are these changes real, or are you just being nice to us? And secondly, if the changes are real, what brought about the change?
Mm-hmm.
What were the effective ingredients in the session?
I think that, for the first question, of course, this is 100% real. I do really feel these emotions have kind of dissipated. They're gone, in terms of some of those other negative emotions, and the grief, of course, is still there. And what brought on the changes, I would say, is I think that going through the positive reframing, and then identifying how emotions were really helpful, and then centering things around like the relationship and the quality of the relationship where it's at, was really helpful to kind of knock out, I even think, like the guilt and the some of the anxiety and some of those other emotions. It just really helped me get through it, I guess. And I think there was a point when I was doing the double standard, and that was like, I was believing it. Mm-hmm. But then I think going into externalization of voices, and then actually saying the negative thought out loud, that like to Rhonda, like was just like, I was like, no, this is not feeling right. Like this just, I just couldn't stay with it. It almost felt like a combination of the two of those methods put together kind of really brought it, like you said, like illustrated the distortions. And I was able to kind of knock it out, or in really hearing actually both of your feedback, kind of doing the role plays.
Right. Beautiful. And then one other teaching point, and then there are several extremely important things to say by way of wrap-up that Rhonda will verbalize in just a moment. But I wanted to say, by way of teaching, to my way of thinking, grief is not an illness and does not need treatment. It's a healthy, positive, beautiful thing, and that we want to grieve because it shows our love for the person that we lost, or in this case are about to lose. The unhealthy grief is, and that healthy grief results from valid, negative thoughts, and most of your negative thoughts are valid and undistorted. So it's mainly healthy grief. Unhealthy grief comes from distorted negative thoughts, and so the treatment is just to focus on the distortions in the thoughts, like I should be strong, I shouldn't feel sad. That's a should statement, and I should have visited more, and they're causing guilt and things. And these distortions distract from the healthy grief, which is actually a very beautiful experience, and one that we can be grateful for. And I just am so proud of you, Rose, and your dad too. If you listen to this with him, which he might enjoy, I'm sure he'll be incredibly proud of you as well. If you do that or something, you can give us a follow-up, and we'll announce it on a subsequent podcast. But I think that you've just given us so much. It's been a joy for me, and I know for Rhonda, and I hope for so many people listening to this show. Most of us are just humble people, and we all have losses that can hurt a great deal. And you've just modeled so beautifully how to deal with loss. And I'll leave the ending up to Rhonda.
There's nothing I could add to that beautiful closing statement.
Okay.
It's been great to get to know you better, Rose, and to help you through this.
Thank you.
I'm so honoring the relationship that you have with your dad.
Thank you. I just want to thank the both of you from the bottom of my heart. How this was just incredible. This was just really it was special to kind of share this with the two of you. And really you were just so warm and so empathetic and connecting, and made this experience just so helpful, and just sharing it. And I think I really kind of arrived to some insights that I hadn't really been sitting on. And I actually do feel more grateful. Like much more gratitude. Like I wonder if we were to measure a positive emotion of gratitude, I would feel like 100% gratitude right now.
Yeah, fantastic. That is so neat. Now, and for me, as I've gotten older and more demented and softened up a bit, I just so much appreciate other people and relationships. In our Tuesday group, I love that. I'm going to get my Sunday hikes going again pretty soon here. I was able to jog twice now without that sciatica that was bothering me. But I just love working with both of you, and it's such a joy to work with you, Rhonda, and to bring your warmth and fantastic brain and compassion to this process.
Oh my gosh, David, thank you. This honor is all mine. It's such a privilege to be able to be in relationship with you and work together with you. Every moment I spend with you, I learn something.
So that's about it for the moment.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Rose. Thank you, David. And
thank you. Thank you, Rhonda and David. This was amazing.
Yeah, it was. It was such a joy. And I guess we'll maybe see you tonight in the group if you're So we'll do more cool shit, as the Buddha so often said in tonight's Tuesday training group. Okay. Have a great day.
I look forward to it. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borovsky, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.